Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, Masechtas Menachot Staf Tzadik. We're going to begin on Tzadik Amud Alv, about 6 lines from the top of the new Mishnah. So the Mishnah tells us, Kol Midos Sheba Mikdash, when it comes to all the different measurings in the base of Mikdash, Hayu Nigdashais. We had this before, and this tells us that all of the Kalim, they were with the assumption that there would be a heap or an overflow, like surface tension, in order to be able to reach that measurement of that particular cup. Chutz mishel kohen gadol, not with a chaviti kohen gadol. And this we said before. Shahaya goyd shel. We want to make sure that it's basically flat, and the reason is because since he has to split it into two, machsisa b'boiker, machsis b'arbayim, half in the morning, half in the afternoon. So therefore he has to split it, and therefore since he does that, it could, if there was a heap, it could spill. So we don't have him with that. That's again, that's what we saw previously. Now minas halach, when it comes to a liquid measure, also birtzuehem kadosh, the liquid that's over the rim, which again is the surface tension. You have the kli, and then you have a little bit more. If you look at it, it goes above. So that also is kadosh, even though it's not actually in the kli. When it's the yavish, when it comes to a dry item, so birtzehem choil. When it comes to anything which is above it, that actually does not take upon itself the sanctity. It says Rashi, Masha nafol min a kli, and whatever fell from that kli, la'achar shetismale hainu birutzin. So that's like the stuff that's on the top. When it comes to midas halach, in itself sanctifies, therefore, which is on the top is kadosh. Midas yavish choil. However, the measurement of the yavish is choil. Lafikach b'yirtzein choil. Okay, so an interesting take says Rashi. Midas yavish b'yirtzein choil. Okay, Rabbi Yosi Oimer lo mishum zeh. That's not the reason to be machal between a kli for dry measure and liquid measure. El shalach ne'aker b'yavish eno ne'aker. Because when it comes to a liquid, so the liquid is swishing around. So therefore, what's on the top doesn't remain on the top. It could be moving around, and therefore the top is kadosh. The bird same is kadosh. Mashen came by yavish. It's a solid mass, so whatever's on the top, on the heap, doesn't move around. That's the reason why it's not kadosh. It says anyway. So Mani, who is our Mishnah like? It says Rashi Hadid Tani Kol Midas Hayu Nigdashais, that they're all heaps. So Ira Meir, is it like Shitas Ra Meir? So Chad Godesh Havi. He said that there was just once, as Rashi, we saw previously on that Pei Zayin, that Godesh Shabo Hayamoidi L'chol Menachos, that they would use this one kli to measure all flour offerings. Mochlik Mida Shel Kohen Gadol Shahayse Gedoyla Kolkach Shegoydel B'Toicha. Irabanan Chada Umochlik Havi. There was one, and it was mochlik. It was like smooth. So Rav Chistel Oyel Rameir Ma Kol Midos Kol Medidos. Anything with that one kli. Okay. Midas halach beard same kadosh ma'kimifli. What's this whole machlokes our mishnah? So the Tanakama savar midas halach. So according to the Tanakama, who says that when it comes to the midas halach, their beard saying is kadosh, but not the beard sehen of yavish. They hold that midas halach nimshacha ben mimifnim ben mimchutz. We actually had this before, that it was anointed on the inside and the outside. Midas yavish nimshachim mimifnim v'lo nimshachim mimchutz, not on the outside. Therefore, anything which is on the outside would not become kadosh. So that's the logic behind that. That's the reason, because it wasn't nimshach on the outside of a kli yavish, so therefore the ritzain, which is on the outside, is kadosh, is chol. Rabbi Kiva savar. Now Rabbi Kiva says that midas halach is kadosh, so therefore the ritzain are kadosh. Midas yavish is chol, that the actual kli itself is chol, because he holds midas halach nimshach b'chutz, midas yavish lo nimshach kol ikr. So therefore, not only the outside is not kadosh, the ritzain, but also everything which is inside of it as well. Okay, so therefore, even what's inside doesn't take upon itself the same levels of kedusha. Rabbi Yosi Savar, no, the kli, whether it's yavish or lach, they're both only the inside and the. So if that's the case, then l'chayra, we should say that even by davar lach, by midas lach, a measurement for liquids, also on the outside should be choil. Now b'hacha ina tayim adalach ne'eker umigava demonikasi, v'yavish in ne'eker v'chi ne'aker. Period. So the fact is, a liquid moves around. So the fact that was on the outside really is also on the inside. A davar yavish on the outside remains on the outside. So v'chi ne'eker by havi. The fact that a liquid moves around, what's the difference? Gavro l'mayid tzarach kamachavin. We only care about the inside. A person is not thinking about this overflow. So what does that mean? We should go buster the das of a person. The das is he's only going to be mekadosh that which he has in mind for, which is on the inside, not the outside. So Amrav Dimi bar Shishno Mishmei the Rav, and this is more in Sukkah. Zois Ameris Kli Sharis Mekachin Shlomadas. That when it comes to Kli Sharis, it could sanctify that which is inside of it, even without the consent of that person. It just happens automatic. So therefore, so too, when it comes to the Brut saying, it doesn't matter if you only had intention on that which is on the inside, not the overflow on the outside. Nonetheless, that is also kadosh. So if that's the case, the stuff on the top should not be kadosh. The problem is that if in fact it is chol, which technically maybe it is, then people are going to think anything that's in a kli sharis you could use for chol. And we know it's only because it was on the top. But if it was inside, then certainly it's kadosh. So therefore, because of that, we say no matter what, when it comes to saying of a davar of a kli lach, so we say that we're gonna I'll say gezerah, we're gonna say that it is kadosh. Meisvei, so Meisev Rav Zera, Sidras Lechem. A person is organizing the lechem upon him, vesabazichin, and the frankincense. La'achar Shabbos, says Rashi, Shlo k'mitzvasai. He's not doing it properly. The mitzvasai ha'ilasad b'Shabbos. We know that really he's supposed to set the lechem upon him, supposed to do it on Shabbos, but instead this guy, he did Shlo Seder, and he did it on Saturday night, on Sunday. So, the hikdaras of bezichin b'Shabbos, he was mater the bezichin on Shabbos, psula. So in that case, it's puzzle. Says Rashi, lefi shesar shehel lechem al shulchan be'Shabbosais, because the breads have to be there for 2 weeks. That first, and then the next week. Ketzid yaseh. So what should he do? So yanichen l'Shabbos haba. He should take the bread because he took it off already. Should put it back for the next week. Shafilu al shulchan yomim rabim, even if it's on for a long time, in bekaklu, that's not a big deal. Yomai hasam namilim gezer shema yomru mafkidin bekli sharis. Maybe we should say we're depositing something like into a kli sharis, and there should be maybe an issue of lina. So apparently that should be an issue. People are going to see what's going on inside the kodesh, and they're going to be like, "What's going on over here? He took it off. He puts it back on, right?" So maybe we should have the same problem. So our answer is no. You can't compare that what's going on inside to the outside. What's going on in the Kodesh room, that's in the Lechem upon him, is in the Heichel. Very few people know what's going on over there. So because people don't see it, it's not something which we have to be concerned of. The only people that would see it are Kohanim. The Kohanim understand the whole reason is based on what happened. However, if it's someone who's chutz, kol yama yadeh, everyone sees it, and that's where it becomes problematic, and therefore that's the reason why we make a gezerah in that case. Okay. Question 9. Madua birtsuni midos halach kadosh. Why do we say that the overflow or the heaping of the liquid is kadosh? So one answer is that kli sharis mekadosh shlomadas, or it's a gezerah shema yomer moitziin mekli sharis l'choil. So take your pick. Okay. Similar question to TA9. Mumandir Midas Lach Birtsuni Kadosh Mishum de Necker Magava Madu Kadosh Vahagavru might Sark Kamachavin. So again, either it's Klisharis Makadosh Madas or Gezerah, as we said. That's TA9, which is the same question as 9. Possibly TB 12. Midas Alach Birtsuni Kadosh Madua. Okay, it's not the same. So Hakli Lach Mekadish Gam Ma Lamala Bamidois Halach V'lo Yavish. Lamala means Bechutz, right? Or Mitoich She, what is this? She Halach Al Gabav Balua Im Zamomata V'Halach Gam Haisa B'Toich Hakli. I'm not sure what that's talking about. So, either because, as we said, I think that was a guess. It's because either, let's write this down. TB10, TB12. So why when Bertsuni Halach is really the Mishnah, right? So, but it says over here. One says that Midas Halach Nimshacha B'Mifnim B'Bechutz. Okay? Midas Yavet, that's only by Midas Halach, but not by Midas Yavesh. Okay? That's one answer. Okay. Or alternatively, as our Mishnah said, because, where are we? Because, Kohamidais. One second, where am I? Oh, here it is. Lefikach. Mishum zeh ela shahalach ne'aker v'yavish eno ne'eker. Right. So that would be another reason, because lach ne'eker, it moves around, right? Since it moves around, so therefore, because of that, that's the reason why. So even what's inside. On the outside, on the top, is going to actually go inside. Fine. It's a little bit of a different question. That was TB12. Okay, let's move on. So then the Gemara continues like this. Tanan Hasan. So we learn over there, it says as follows. So it says in Shkolm, Meiser Nesachim, when it comes to any leftover nesachim that a person has, this is Gemara in Shkolm. So it's l'kayetz mizbeach. So what does that mean? Kayetz, like a dessert for the mizbeach. So we always wanted to have. We don't want to leave the mizbeach idle. So what we'll do is when there's no karbanos, we will use this so the mizbeach doesn't remain by batal. We'll always bring karbanos. So that's what's called kayetz mizbeach. So the leftover nesachim, we use that for kayetz mizbeach. So my meiser nesachim. What does it mean? What are the extra nesachim? What does that mean? Shemechia bar Yosef oimer berutzi midos. It's referring to this overflow. So with that, we use that value for that purpose. Rabbi Yochanan oimer kaister shishnin, like we learned before. Hamakabel v'sapik salosais miarba. You accept upon yourself for a selah of money. V'oimdu b'shalosh, and then it goes to 3 sa for a selah, right? So in that case, he's sapik ma'arba. You need to give it based on the basically the lower price. Okay, so therefore you end up having to do 4 sa to a selah because you're giving this to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, he's sapik ma'arba. Let's say it was at 4, and then after that. Mi'arba, mishalosh, v'amdu ma'arba, masabig ma'arba. So let's say it's the other way around, right? If it changes from 3 to 4, so you still have to do 4. Shiyad hektish el yoino. Hektish always gets the upper hand. So he gives an extra saw. This is what's referring to the Ketzah Mizbech. Says Rashi, top, dalad soyin besela, masabig ba'ar b'soyin. So the 4 saw for a selah But oiso selwa shanaisa lemikdash, this extra saw that you're giving, mimasha kibolav hainu moisa nesachim shein l'kaitzam mizbeach. Tanik v'asted Rav Chiya bar Yosef. Tanik v'asted Rav Yochanan. Tanik v'asted Rav Chiya bar Yosef. Berutzi midos. When it comes to this heap, this overflow, hello mahoisin. Behen, what do you do with it? So im yesh zevach acher. If there was another carbon, yakari v'imo, you're makar with it. V'im lanu yisul belina. V'im lav. But let's say it's not possible. Makitzin mehenas mizbeach. So you put on the mizbeach. So v'kayitz ze mahu. What is this referring to? As I mentioned before, it's olos. Habasar, the meat is l'shem. V'oiro yisel kahanim. So the meat goes to Hashem, and the hides go to the kohanim, just like an olah. Tani Gavas Rav Yochanan, Makabel of Masapik Slosos Merabov. A person designated a saw of flour for 4. Yonam Mishalosh ends up becoming 3. Masapik Merabov, you have to give 4 saw of flour. Mishalosh v'yamdu Merabov, Masapik Merabov, you still have to give 4. Shad hektar shal yoinam. Zehu shishninu ma'isa nesachim l'kaitzam mizbeach. This extra is kaitzam mizbeach. Question 10. Tanan, and this is literally directly from Masechta Shkolm. Not the easiest Masechta, by the way. Ma'isa nesachim l'kaitzam mizbeach. So ma ma'isa nesachim. So either it's referring to berutzi midos, this overflow, this overheap. I'm not sure how much that is. Or, like we said, if you're mekabel of to give flour, and it went from 3, and it becomes lower in value, it comes to 4, so you still have to keep it at 4. So basically, the profit that the Beis HaMikdash makes in the difference in the fluctuation of values and price, that is l'kaitzam mizbeach. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. Kol karbanos hatzibur hayachet tu'unin nesachim. When it comes to all karbanos, for the most part, it says even if it's a communal or yachid, you have to accompany with that carbon nesachim these libations. Chutz min habachor, no meiser pesach. When it comes to these karbanos, which are kadoshim kalim, you do not need to do. And Rashi says, kul mishum chayvaninhu. These, as opposed to what we mentioned before, are nedavis. So therefore, in the Davis, you can bring the sach. You bring the sachim. When it comes to a chayiv, like a bechor or ma'aser behem or a karban pesach, the sachim do not accompany it. And for that matter, says the Mishnah, v'chatas v'asham, as well as these other karbanos. If you sinned, which of course that's not a nedava. You're not bringing a karban chatas because of a nedava. You're doing because you need to achieve kapara. Ella shechataso shematzayra v'ashamatu nesachim. The exception with a chatas is when it comes to a matzayra and it's asham, requiring the sachim to accompany it. Dafka by Masara. Asham and Sarah, there's always so many exceptions to it, and there's another one. Says the Gemara, Tanoban. The pasuk says, "V'asisim yishel Hashem." They shall make as a fire offering to Hashem. So Yachol kol oil ishim. You would think the whole thing gets burnt up. Yeah, and every carbon that ye tie in the sachim, every single one. I feel mincha, even maybe a flour offering should also, which comes by itself without a carbon, so maybe that mincha requires the sachim. Talmud lemer oila. It's got to be like an oil, which is like an animal, which is the exclusion of a mincha flour offering. Shlomim menayin. How do we know also a shlomim needs the sachim? Talmud lemer zevach. Toida menayin. Talmud lemer o zevach. That's true. Oh. Which are karbanos, which are not free will offerings, but chayva. Talmud lemer Lafali neder oben nedava. Ba b'neder v'nedava, if it's something which is like a free will offering, those are toin nesachim. Shenu ba b'neder v'nedava, rather it's a chayiv to bring them than ein toin nesachim. Mashmo haitzias elus, to exclude the things that we mentioned in our mission, which are chayvas. Otzias chayvais abois machmas regel. We're going to exclude chayvais which come because of the holidays. Beregel. So beregel my nihu. Oilos re'iyah, v'shalmi chagiga. When it comes to the oilos re'iyah, which you have to bring, when you're oil regel, you have to bring a carbon oila, an oilos re'iyah, as well as the shalmi chagiga. So these are also on the list of even though they're obligations, so nonetheless nesachim are not brought. Talmud Loimer, so maybe you think these. Talmud Loimer, om b'moadechem, kol ha b'moadechem toin nesachim. Says no. fakir. When it comes to oilus re'iyah, because it's something, even though it's true, it's a chayiv, but it's connected to your moed, so anything which is moed related, so it does require nesachim. Mashmal havias elu to include these. Question 11. Heim karbanos adol halon tainis nesachim. Do they require? So oilus re'iyah, yes. So that so far we know it does require. Avi seiri chatos. I'll also include the seiri chatos. Because it's done then. So Talmud Lemer v'chisasa ben bakar b'chlal hoya v'lami yatzal hakashelu ma ben bakar miyuchad ba b'nedim v'nadava. It's only which is a free will. I've called ba b'nedim v'nadava. So therefore, the siri chatos is an exclusion, and the siri chatos will not require nesachim. Okay. Lasos reach nechayach Hashem min abakar umin atzayin. So matam l'leimer v'ishnemer oila. Since it says only by an oila mashmani afil oila sa'of. Maybe even a bird oila sa'of. Not just oila re'iyah, but oila sa'of. If it's a bird, also maybe it needs nesachim. B'mashma b'mashma. Talmud l'leimer min habakar o min hatzayin. So he's basically saying it's got to be animal, it's got to be cattle, excluding a bird. So an oilus re'iyah, an oilus ha'of, is not going to require nesachim. Okay. You don't even need to tell us that. We already know that's not going to require. Sorry, zevach. The oaf, eno zevach. The pasuk says zevach, which is a carbon. So you don't need this extra riboy, or this meat rather, from this pasuk. It just says zevach. Obviously, an oaf is not a zevach. So then why does it say that? At the very beginning of Sefer Vayikra, it says, when a person brings a carbon, so Yachal Aimer Harei Oyula, the person makes the declaration, I'm going to bring a carbon Oyula that Yavi Mishnehem, maybe you have to bring both. Min Habakar O Minatzain. You can bring either one. Ratza Echad maybe, Ratza Shnai maybe. You can bring one or two. Rav Yonasan Lomali Kra, Ha'aimer Achi Benucha Kasev Yachtav. So, and this is a famous machlokas, which is brought down in Rashi over here. Of course, we make a distinction because we know when it comes to cursing your father and mother, the Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us, it doesn't say together, mashmanami echad echad, that even if you curse your mother or your father, you're chayev, unless it specifically says yachtav together, like for example by shatnis, that you can't will still semer pishin yachtav. So since it's yachtav, you're only chayev if you wear both together, not one. But otherwise, if it doesn't say yachtav, we know it's one or the other. So why would we even need to teach us? Oh, it's telling you it's not both; it's just one. But it doesn't say yachtav. So why would you think it would be both? Yes, so maybe you would have the havamina thing because we continue to study Aleph Aleph that hoyel, because of min hatzayin, since it has that vav in there, which is a conjunction, which is adding on, command echsiv yachtav dami, the vav and is comparable to yachtav, it's like linking them. Rabbi Shaya, the Rafagad lo ksiv yachtav, command echsiv yachtav dami liboy kra. So according to him, even if it doesn't say yachtav, it's like it does say it. So how do you understand it? So ksiv im oil karbanim in a bakar, v'im min hatzayin karbanoi. So he learns out from those psukim. What does he do with those psukim? That's why we explicitly explain which are animals. If he wasn't so specific, then maybe he would have to bring from both kamash mulan. So if he was explained clearly, then of course he only has to bring one. But if he didn't say anything, maybe Taka does have to bring two in this case. That's the chiddush. Okay. Question 11. Do these karbonos require nesachim? So olus re'iyah, the answer is yes, it does. Olus ha'of, we said no. Of no. Seiri chatas, the musaf, does not require nesachim. And tamuras olo, which I don't think we did, but tamuras olo will require nesachim. Don't think we got to that yet, but that's the correct answer. TA 10. Ketzim Levi and the Sachim. Okay. Same question. Adkan.